I'm not sure there's a good way to start this. My name is Andrew Bethke. Right now, it is May 2020. I am a senior at DC Everest Idea School, and I won't be for much longer. This video is the culmination of my K-12 education. It wasn't supposed to be a video, it was supposed to be a presentation delivered in front of a live audience. But that's not possible now. And instead, I give you this video presentation thing. Hopefully it doesn't suck. For the past year, I've been working primarily on one thing, making videos. I still did some other normal high schooler things, like taking a foreign language and learning math that's way too hard, but primarily I was focusing on videos. Now, out of context, those few sentences probably prompt a pretty obvious question. I'm sorry, what did you just say? And to answer that, I'm going to ask another question. How did I get here? The story begins just over 7 years ago. I was a nerdy kid in 5th grade. I looked like this. The guidance counselors in my elementary school had started hyping us 5th graders up for the move to the middle school the next year. But my family found out that there was another option. That option was IDEA, a project-based charter school. Everything there was done via self-directed, student-led projects. We decided that I was going to go there. The move allowed me to explore other things that I wouldn't have had the opportunity to otherwise, different activities that I never had tried before. And one of those things was making videos. Honestly, I don't remember why I decided that I wanted to make videos, but obviously I did. And at first I was interested in filming myself playing video games. Now, to be fair to the younger me, that is a thing that people watch on the internet. But mine were quite possibly the most annoying and least entertaining pieces of media ever created. Here's a clip from my first video.
Okay. Let's light this fire up and make some meat.
See? No redeeming factors whatsoever. Now, I did try to improve stuff at least a little bit right away. That first video was just in standard definition. And after that, I moved to recording in HD for all future videos. And that marked the beginning of a slow stream of improvements to the quality of my videos. And it did take years, but eventually I decided to try something new. Now, when I tried something new for the first time, it wasn't a huge step, but it was a step in the right direction. You see, the first thing that was different that I made was still games related. It was this commentary piece on this small controversy that happened. But when you boil it down, that video was me reading from a script and using the imagery beneath it to try to tell a story. Those animations were 100% copyright infringement, but they were more than just me playing a video game. Up until this point, I hadn't been trying to tell a story or really impart anything on the viewer at all. As John Lasseter of Pixar and Disney once said, no amount of great animation will save a bad story. And the same thing applies to any sort of videography. I didn't have great imagery or great audio or a great voice, But I could tell a story. And if I wanted to try to make something that didn't completely suck, well, then I would have to be telling a great story. This is where I started trying to be more purposeful with my videos. Games are easy, you can just record yourself playing them. And controversies you can write pretty much whatever about. But they don't need substance. They absolutely need substance to be good, but I didn't have any. This was also the point where I started to integrate video into my schooling. And because of that, I needed to do a lot more research in order to make my next video work. That video was on clean energy and the benefits that the transition could have beyond the environmental ones that you think of. And it worked. Was it the most comprehensive collection of information on clean energy ever? No, of course it wasn't. That wasn't what I set out to make. But it argued my point, and it did it successfully. And I carried that success into my next video, which was on a history topic. More specifically, it was on the history of circus music. And yes, that's right. I made an entire video on this song. You've probably heavily associated that song with the idea of the circus. But why? Why does even hearing the opening few notes of that song immediately make you think of elephants and clowns and everything else that goes with the circus? Well, it turns out that we don't really know why. We just don't. No one recorded enough about it for us to know. That video ended up being just about 3.5 minutes long, covering what we do know, the composer, the title, that sort of thing, as well as a bit of general history on other circus music called screamer marches. But it was also the video where I really started to experiment with character design. You see, up until this point, with the clean energy video, I had been relying on some really simple animations that in a lot of the cases couldn't even be called that to fill the video while I was talking. The most ambitious and polished animation from Clean Energy is this one, of Cole making jobs represented by a briefcase. But with the circus music video, I started to actually try to design characters and animate with them. Okay, side note here. These are my characters. They're called Blobbleheads, and get used to them. They're going to be a mainstay from here on out. While I did use these characters a bit in the Clean Energy video, I really started to explore what I could do with them and try to design specific characters in the circus music video. New designs included Julius Caesar and a character to play the role of me. And it wasn't perfect, but it was an improvement, and I knew that even at the time. So coming off of the circus music video, I made what was by far the most ambitious of the 3 videos produced for my first video production project. The topic was one that I'd been interested in for a long time by that point: overpopulation. Overpopulation is a surprisingly controversial subject, with different experts disagreeing as to why it is or isn't a problem. And that was the first problem. Overpopulation is a huge subject, and you could easily make a feature film about just one of the 2 sides of that argument. And I was trying to cover both in a 7-minute YouTube video. That was just never going to work. And as if that wasn't enough, coming off of the improvements I'd made in the circus music video, my ambition to be visually interesting absolutely exploded. Looking back at them, the Clean Energy and the circus music videos were incredibly simple visually. A lot of the animations in them didn't even move, and they relied incredibly heavily on stock photography. With the overpopulation video, I wanted to change that, and early on in the video, that's pretty evident. In the first minute, there is both an explosion and animated rain. Do you know how hard it is to animate rain? Because it's pretty dang hard, okay? The problem with me trying to ramp up my graphics was that higher quality animation takes a really long time. And I pretty early on and pretty quickly, I got completely discouraged and completely sick of the video production process. And eventually I just wanted to rush through it. I just wanted that video done. So I did that. I rushed through the last, at least half of it, and it shows. The second half of that video clearly has lower quality animation and less effort put into it than the first half did. And it also took forever. Between the Clean Energy and the circus music videos, there was about 4 months, almost exactly. Between that one and the overpopulation video, 10 months. It took me almost a year to make that video. And really it wasn't any better than the previous two. You know, maybe a little. Maybe that rain counted for something. But maybe it was 0.1 points better on a scale of 1 to 10. And it had taken a toll on me, too. I hated the video production process at that point. And you see, I was halfway through my junior year of high school at that point. At IDEA, your senior year is primarily comprised of one big culminating project for your entire IDEA career. And I knew that I wanted to do mine on video production. So I took a break. I didn't really work on any video stuff until the summer. But I wasn't completely idle in that time. Podcasts, radio shows, except on the amazing new technology known as the internet. There are so many of these things, and I make one of them. The story here involves this guy, Morgan. Me and him wasted a whole bunch of time at school talking about movies. And because we were at IDEA, and we had the freedom to be able to do this, we decided to make talking about movies part of school by making a podcast. By doing this, I continued to hone my audio editing skills even when I wasn't working on videos. Those two skill sets have quite a lot of overlap. Like, you can hear me right now. Videos have audio. It's half of what it is. So we'd been doing that since my sophomore year, and we kept doing it while I was taking my break from video stuff. And now here we are at the end of my junior year, I guess. And this is the point where I started my senior project. So my goal with my senior project was pretty simple. I wanted to be able to keep doing video stuff and to try to do it at a level that I had never done it before, to make something that might actually be mistaken for a professional production. But I also wanted to ensure myself from the possibility that I would put way too much effort into something and begin to hate the process like I did after the overpopulation video. And I wanted to keep doing my podcast. So I didn't do a video production project for my senior project. I did a media production project, because media can include all of these things. And I came up with those in like 2 minutes when I was outlining this video. There are probably even more. So, with the title and what I wanted to do set, I began to work on my senior project. What I was thinking when I started my senior project was that I was going to keep making a series of well-researched, high production value videos, but with one major change. Instead of all animation all of the time, I was going to film myself talking about the things, and then I was going to animate over that when I needed to. This was an attempt to decrease turnaround time after the overpopulation video took absolutely forever. Now, I could tell you that early on in my senior project, I shifted gears and I decided that I was going to focus on one big project and one big set of videos instead of a whole bunch of little ones. But that would be a lie. You see, I'd found a topic that was pretty much exactly where I wanted these things to be at as far as depth of the topic and, how long they were going to be and stuff like that. What I didn't realize is how long it takes to do absolutely everything when you're trying to make something actually good. The research for that video alone took me the entire summer. Now, part of it was that I was working 32 hours a week, and it's really hard to motivate yourself to do school stuff when you know that you got to go work an 8-hour shift at noon. But part of it was also because I just didn't realize how long it took to research things good. Okay, I'll stop dancing around it now. Let's talk about the story of longitude. As with all my good ideas, this one started with me just thinking to myself one day. And I was thinking about latitude and longitude. You see, latitude and longitude have existed for thousands of years. They were invented by the ancient Greeks. So I was wondering, how did anyone measure them before GPS? Because, now you can just look at your phone and it'll tell you exactly where you are in the world. They couldn't do that. Ancient Greeks couldn't do that. Christopher Columbus couldn't do that. The Mayflower couldn't, they couldn't do that. They didn't have phones. That's how history works, kids. So I started to research it, and by the end of it, about 20 websites, a novel, like a nonfiction novel about longitude, not just some random novel. And loads of time later, I had put together this incredibly compelling story about discovery, and it involved one of the brightest minds, if not the brightest mind, of the exploration age, Galileo Galilei, and this unknown clockmaker who I'd never heard of before named John Harrison. And it was a really good topic, and I wrote a script, and it came to be about 3,000 words long, just over 3,000 words. And so this was the end of summer now, and my thought was, okay, I'll go to the center of the northwestern hemisphere. That's a geographic point here, Wausau, Wisconsin. 45 degrees north and 90 degrees west. East. It's west. I'm dumb. It's west. Definitely west. And that's latitude and longitude, so I'll go there to shoot it, and I'll edit it, I'll do some animations over it, it'll be done in like a month. But upon further review, that wasn't going to work. Thanks to a couple of fantastic friends who have critiqued everything I have done this year and have put up with me asking for them to do that, I realized that there was a lull in the middle of it. And upon further review, that made a lot of sense. In the middle, I was basically transitioning between the story of Galileo and the story of Harrison. So I decided to split the script in two. And so I wrote another introduction and another conclusion to put on to the start of the second video and the end of the first video, respectively. And I did some more editing of the script, trying to get it really tight and really, not waste words. Because by this point, I had a script that was, I had two scripts that together were just under 4,000 words long. And that's a lot of words. And by the time I was finished with that script review process, I was a month into the school year. It was October, and I was doing a video production project, and I hadn't even set foot in front of a camera yet. But despite the fact that I was already a month behind my imaginary schedule, I kept going. And one day after school, I got into my car and I came out to the center of a hemisphere. Here. Now, as I said, this was the first big shoot I was doing for my senior project, and I hadn't done anything like this before. There were a few things I didn't realize. First of all, I was coming out here after school, so I would only have a few hours to shoot everything, and the sun was going to be setting to my left the whole time. In addition to that, once I got here, I realized this.
So, I didn't know that there was a big path. I thought you just sort of pulled off the side of the road.
So, I was already off to a bumpy start. By the time I got to the end of that path, I could barely hold on to everything I was carrying, as the shakiness of this shot will demonstrate.
And holy crap, my arm is getting tired from holding this camera. Jesus! How long is this path?
But I persisted. I wasn't discouraged. I set up my tripod and my camera and I started filming. But immediately, there was another problem. It turns out that it's not very easy to memorize just under 4,000 words. So the entire time I was shooting that video, I was mentally flailing, trying to remember my script. At some points, it kind of worked. I got pretty close to the script and everything was fine. But at other points, I completely deviated, talking about things in the wrong order, or missing things, or at one point, even talking about a storyline that didn't even end up making it into the final script. And that was a problem. That meant that it took me way more time than I thought I would need to shoot this video. And so, before I could finish doing it, the sun started to set rapidly, and with it, the light changed. It was changing too fast for me to keep shooting. And so, I stopped. I set up a time lapse and waited around for 45 minutes, watching the sunset. The next day, I went back to school and started sifting through the footage. And that went less than perfect. It turns out that when you can't follow your script, you can't edit based on your script. I had tagged and commented on specific words in the script with specific animations I wanted to do at those points. And the vast majority of those had to be scrapped, because I just didn't say the right words. One of them was an animation of a boat playing a guitar, because you can't make a boat not rock. Losing that one hurt, not gonna lie. In addition to that problem, it also meant that I needed more animations. And the reason for that's pretty simple. If I just cut like this, then that's pretty jarring. In amateur context, and even in some professional contexts, that's what canned transitions are for. They fade or flash or slide or do something in order to not hide the cut, but make it less jarring, to transition between clips in a more natural way. But if you want to keep your story flowing, if you want to make it look like you know what you're talking about, then you need to hide the cut. And the way to do this is simple. you cut away to something else. In most professional productions, you'll have at least two cameras going. Your A-roll camera, which is your main subject, in this case me talking to the camera, and your B-roll camera. Now this is pointing at something else, or even just another angle on your main subject. And this is something that you can cut away to hide a cut. So, for example, if I screwed up here, then what I could do is cut to that camera and then cut back to the main camera. You see, there could have been any amount of time in between there, and I paused for a bit to think about my script, but you didn't notice because I was able to cut away and hide that. Now, I didn't have two cameras on the day I was here shooting the longitude video. I only had one, and I couldn't even point my phone at myself because I only had one tripod. The animations were my B-roll. Hence, more cuts, more animation. It took me over 30 animations just in the first video. And that takes time. Editing the first video took almost 4 months. It wasn't done until late January. Now, to outside observers at this point, it was probably pretty obvious that I wasn't getting much done this year other than the longitude video. But I still didn't understand that. I immediately started editing the second video, albeit with a bit of a modified workflow to try to speed things up. But that wasn't all that I was doing. There were other projects in the works. First of all, I was still doing the podcast. Some examples of movies that we talked about this year include the worldwide box office hit A Christmas Prince and a little indie flick known as Avengers Endgame. But in addition to the podcast and the longitude video, there were other video projects in the works as well. The project I was working on while I was editing the second longitude video was called Multiple Discovery. It was another history topic. Multiple discovery is this phenomenon in history where multiple people or groups discover the same thing, whether it be an invention or something scientific, at the same time, with no cross-pollination or anything. This happens a lot in history. An example I used in the script was the fact that Alexander Graham Bell and Elisha Gray both tried to patent the telephone on the same day. But wait. I said that that was an example that I used in the script. Yeah. I wrote an entire script that I ended up scrapping. And the reason why I scrapped it will come later, but first I want to talk to you about the other video idea that I was working on. Okay, now it's finally time for me to address the elephant in the field. The ongoing coronavirus pandemic. Now I want to keep this video as detached from current events as possible, but this one is just too huge to ignore. Or at least it is, because it plays into the narrative. You see, during this time of upheaval and isolation, many people are suddenly being forced to work from home. Now this presents loads of challenges, not the least of which are the distractions the home environment presents. And if you search for solutions to this, if you Google how to work from home better or how to avoid distractions while working from home, you're going to find one piece of advice way more than any other. And that is to create a separate working space within your home. And that's what the video was about. But it wasn't just about that. I also tried to explain why this works. But it turns out that space separation, as I was calling it, is pretty difficult to research. Or at least it was difficult for me when I was trying to rush through the research process in order to get a video out as quickly as possible. As a result, the final script was full of pre-existing knowledge that I didn't have any backing for, let alone reliable sources. And that was a problem. But even that huge, glaring problem with this video that I made isn't why I scrapped it. In fact, the reason has more to do with the multiple discovery video than you might think. The reason that I decided to scrap space separation and multiple discovery is that I decided that I didn't want to go that direction with my video career. I didn't, and still don't, want to water down what I'm making with quicker, lower quality videos The longitude video was great because I put loads of effort into it, because I came here, because I didn't just sit in my house in front of a camera and a teleprompter and recite the words. That's just boring. And if the videos don't have value to me, if I don't enjoy the process, and if I don't enjoy the final result, then there's not really any point. You know, no one really cares enough to watch what I make, because why would they? I'm a high schooler making random stuff in a field in the middle of nowhere. So if it doesn't have value to me, what's the point? And that is the first major lesson that I learned from this whole project. But there are a lot more that I need to talk about. IDEA is a school, and the point of a school is to, you know, to get kids to learn things. So thinking about that goal, it's easy to wonder, why did they let a high school kid make some really long videos about longitude this past year? You know, what could possibly be the point of that? And it turns out that when you give students practical experience and you let them actually do something, they're going to gain practical skills. You know, video is an art form, and with any art form, to teach that, you can't teach it. You need to give someone experience and let them learn about it for themselves. You know, you could sit through film classes by the greatest directors ever, by Steven Spielberg and Christopher Nolan and John Lasseter, and you could then sit down and write the worst screenplay ever. To improve at something like this, you have to actually do it. And this past year has given me the opportunity to do that, to do video stuff, and to learn about it. And here are some of the lessons that has let me learn that I could have never learned otherwise. Video takes a long time to make. Like a really long time. For the story of Longitude, at the end of it, I ended up with about 30 minutes of finished footage, a bit less than that. Those 30 minutes took me about 250 hours to produce. That is an astonishingly bad time put in to return ratio. In that same amount of time, I could have watched the movie Titanic about 80 times. I could have watched all 23 Marvel movies that are out right now almost exactly 5 times. I could have driven 17,500 miles at highway speeds. But comparisons aside, what exactly took so long? Animation was by far the longest process. It regularly took me over an hour to get 5 seconds of finished animation. That means that it took me 12 minutes per second of finished animation. Now, are there ways that I could have sped that up? Of course there are. For most of the year, I was primarily editing and animating on a MacBook Air. Ultra-portable laptops like that are not designed to edit video. That's not their purpose. And it did speed up some once I moved to a desktop workstation toward the end of the year for almost everything. And I have gotten faster, and I'm sure I would continue to get faster as I continue to gain experience. But even taking that into consideration, I have absolutely nothing but respect for people who work 40 hours a week on feature-length animated movies. And I have even more respect for the people who worked and drew the hand-drawn animated movies of yesteryear. Those are insanely impressive feats, and they deserve nothing but commendation. But that's not the only thing that takes a long time. That's not even the only visual thing that takes a long time. As this staple of cinematic video, if you want to call it that, takes almost as long. Who doesn't love time lapses? Nobody. No, nobody. They're just great. Whether they're stars swirling across the night sky or clouds racing across a field of blue, or the sun setting at an impossible speed, they're just great. You know, they're beautiful. But they also take a long time, which I think is going to be a running theme here. You know, if you do the math on this, if you take a photo every 10 seconds and you stitch them together into a time lapse, then an hour of shooting translates into 20 seconds of video. I think that's right.
That number should actually be 15 seconds. I remembered the math wrong.
Granted, that's mostly unattended time, but if you're in a situation where you're in the middle of nowhere, at the center of a hemisphere, perhaps, and you're setting up a time lapse of the sun setting, then you can't really do anything else productive in that time. It wasn't completely sedentary. We did get some of these gems of me pointing my phone at things while that time lapse was going. I'll show you some of them now. So apparently it's a good thing I stopped, because over there somewhere where you're looking, just pointed you at the sun, that's great. Over there where you were looking before, there is now a truck honking its horn and being very loud, and so I wouldn't have gotten any usable footage anyway. There's just some pumpkins here. Are these real pumpkins? Yeah, that feels like real pumpkin. Okay, were those good? I hope those were good. Because otherwise they're just a complete waste of time. But as I was saying, you know, even though I was doing some of that stuff, while I was waiting for the time lapse I took, it was basically 45 minutes of screwing around and not doing anything productive for 12 seconds of finished time lapse. And that time lapse is great. I love that time lapse. But it's a lot of time. And even despite that, even talking about that 45 minutes might not even be the most time I wasted on that shoot, because it turns out that when you're reading from a script, it's really easy to screw up that script. Memorizing lots of words is really hard. It's really hard. The final scripts for the 2 longitude videos came out to just over 3,700 words long. Memorizing lots of words is really, really hard. The final 2 scripts for the longitude videos came out together to just over 3,700 words long. And my intention with those was, okay, I'm going to go to the longitude marker, I'm going to recite the words in front of the camera, and then I am going to leave. And it's that simple. Except it's not that simple, because memorizing 3,700 words and reciting them perfectly in front of a camera is really difficult. Nay, impossible. So that day was instead filled with countless rereading and reshoots of the same material over and over again. And it took a lot longer than I expected it to. Even then, I strayed from my script significantly. And there were some screw-ups that needed to be left in the final video. And it turns out that when you can't stick to your script, you can't animate around your script either. So because of that, a lot of the animations that I had planned out and commented in my script had to be completely redone and rethought out. I had to come up with new ideas because I just didn't say those words, or I said them at the wrong part of the video, or something else. But even that, I don't think, is the longest part of the process. There's one more part that can take an incredibly long time. And I guess it could take literally forever if you wanted it to. Researching ideas is really hard. It takes a long time. I have this list of over 20 sources for the longitude video. And that doesn't sound like a lot when you say 20 sources, but one of them's a 200-page book, and the rest of them are articles comprising thousands upon thousands of words. And it takes a long time to go through all of that, and I'm actually not sure I did enough research. Truth is a hard thing to establish, and if someone came up to me today and they disputed something that I said in one of those 2 videos, I wouldn't know 100% that they were wrong. You know, I should have done more research into John Harrison and the Longitude Prize and everything I talk about in those 2 videos. You know, these are people and inventions that changed European and world history. There's got to be some expert somewhere that I could have tracked down and talked to, but I didn't do that, even though I should have. And under the standards that I want to hold myself to going forward, that is just completely unacceptable. But there's a reason that it's so easy and so human to under-research something. I've had a lot of ideas over the past 3 years for videos that I could make. And most of them were completely terrible. And that's for a very simple reason. If you ever look into how many TV shows get canceled after their first season, it's about 2/3 of them. And that means that 2/3 of the ideas that were good enough to get a TV show that were good enough for the pilot to get picked up were still bad enough that they didn't resonate with viewers and didn't get a second season. And when you look at that statistic, it's just completely insane that so many creative people take their first idea and they run with it and they try to do it. Because your first idea is probably terrible. And that's nothing to do with you. It's because most ideas are terrible. Over these past few years, and over this past year, this project specifically, I think that I've gotten a lot better at separating the good ideas from the bad ideas. I think. And that's important because, you know, you can turn a bad idea into something that's like mildly okay, but it takes a good idea to make something great. And finally, this has all been really leading to one big conclusion, and that is that experience is everything. You know, there's so many things in life that can only be taught by making mistakes and learning from them, and not by reading them off a chalkboard at the front of the classroom. And project-based learning is the only way to integrate that into our school system. This past year of working on this media project and making the set, I guess, of longitude videos has really given me an even greater opportunity to appreciate that than I've had in the past 7 years of going to IDEA before this. And I'm not going to tell you how we need to integrate this into our schooling system. You know, there are people who are a lot smarter than me and who actually have teaching experience who would be a lot better suited to figuring that out. But I am going to tell you that we need to do it.
You know what? No, cut the music. I'm not doing another one of those. Here's the conclusion.
Over the past year, I have learned entirely too much about Renaissance man solving the longitude problem. And at the same time, I've also learned a bunch about the actual challenges that come with producing media by actually doing it. I could not be more grateful to the current advisors at IDEA, as well as the former advisors who have shaped the school as it stands today. It is truly an amazing opportunity, And I hope that they are able to continue to shape the lives of the students that get to go there, even as outside challenges continue to be difficult to solve. And I know that they will, because the advisors at IDEA are just amazing people, and this video cannot come close to expressing how much it has changed my life over the past 7 years. Thank you so much. Okay, I guess that's it then.